Yes, and when we originally started doing these numbers, we were planning that in the most ideal situation, we would be in our home schools. And so we were also anticipating the idea that our students would, you know, in a perfect world, would be able to go back to their school to receive this type of program. But if it is virtual, then obviously we don't have the transportation cost and those things involved as well.
Right. So this 962,000 is if it is in a virtual environment, but if we did try to get the kids, if the restrictions were lifted and we tried to get the kids into their home schools, that number would go up fairly dramatically.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to look at the math again. I don't have it sitting in front of me right now, but Chris, I saw you kind of nodding a little bit. Yeah, we would have to go back and look at the numbers again, but yes, transportation is a huge expense, there's no doubt.
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, it was a couple $100,000 at least for transportation. That's just off the top of my head. But I also think we're running out of time to even do an in-house program because of all the logistics we'd have in getting our buildings prepared and getting routes set, all that kind of stuff. So I think we're almost at a point where, I don't want to speak out of turn, but that may be a difficult thing to pull off at this point.
Okay, so maybe we pull the trigger on saying it would have to be a virtual program and just design it in the best way we possibly can in that.
I think that's where Cabinet was the other day, and Cindy, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's where directors were too, is that, you know, we want to do something as well as we can, and we don't want it to be last minute, and we don't want people potentially to be like, well, they're not coming, you know, because we're not you know, we haven't been that long into phase 2, and we know that phase 2 is small groups of kids, and it's a lot of logistics and planning that would be involved in the final hours.
And we wanted to make sure at minimum we had something effective planned. And that's why we said, well, at minimum we have to have virtual summer program. If we had enough time and we knew we were going to be able to do some small group in person, we'd do our best to do that. But at minimum, we had to have this planned.
And Chris was correct. It's about 200,000 would be our estimate for transportation. But I would say I think Jason and Cindy and their folks need to continue to plan this way because a couple more caveats. Mike and his team would need some lead time to design bus routes. But even then, we'd have to see how many of our bus drivers would be in a position to respond in that setting. So it could be that even if somehow the conditions change to allow in person, there might not be the time and the resource to make it happen either. So I think it's better to continue to plan this way, and if we can get somewhere else, then that'll just be icing on the cake.